My name is Kendall Becker, and I work at USU as the Assistant Director of the Science Writing Center, and I'm also a recipient of an NSF Graduate Research Fellowship from some years ago, and that kind of steered my path into seeking a PhD at USU. And then I kind of moved more into this education realm, working at the Science Writing Center. And now, for the last couple of years, I've been coordinating a workshop series to help new applicants apply for the NSF GRFP at USU. And it's based on a workshop series that I took when I applied, when I was doing my master's at the University of Washington. Recipients of the NSF GRFP receive 3 years of funding, and that involves an annual stipend of $34,000 a year and an annual cost of education allowance that's $12,000 a year, and that can cover tuition and fees paid to the institution. So the idea is that individuals who are receiving this award are well funded during their graduate studies, whether that's them pursuing a master's degree or a PhD. There are many materials that describe eligibility in great detail, but for undergraduates, there are a couple of things to consider. One is that you can apply during your senior year or after receiving your bachelor's degree, and you can apply multiple times while you're at that level. But once you start your graduate program, then you can apply just one more time, and that's either in the first year of your program or at the very beginning of your second year. There are many fields that the NSF funds that fall broadly in STEM categories. So that's, let's see, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And they have a long list of life sciences and other categories that are available on their website, so you can see if your specific field fits within one of theirs. But broadly, they are interested in supporting STEM researchers. It's good to have the idea that you might apply for this award years ahead of time, because there are many things you can do to prepare yourself to be a competitive applicant. And so a couple of years before you're thinking you might want to apply, you'll want to start getting involved in research projects, presenting and publishing your work, and teaching and mentoring other students, and getting involved in community outreach in your field. And so that's kind of a way that you can pave the way for yourself to be a strong applicant for this. Then in the year that you are planning on applying, at least in the spring or even earlier, it would be good to look up the websites that the NSF provides about the fellowship. And that's a good way to get familiar with what they're looking for, so you can kind of see what things you might need to add to prepare. Once you're getting into the summer before, or that spring before, you'll want to think about a faculty mentor who could support you in your application, and they would ideally help you work out an idea for your research that you could make sure is novel for that field, and they could ideally also write you a strong letter of recommendation. So this might be a person who you've worked with on previous projects. Then the next step is to have an idea for a simple, novel research project that you could propose as part of this application. Another thing that would happen this summer before you apply is to contact 3 previous mentors who could write you strong letters of recommendation. There's an online component where applicants put in their education, work, and other experience that functions like an unofficial CV. And then applicants also submit academic transcripts that could be official or unofficial. they'll prepare 2 essays. So the first essay is a personal relevant background and future goals statement, and that's 3 pages combined. And then the second essay is a graduate research plan statement, that's 2 pages. Those statements have to be very well written and well thought out. And so oftentimes it's recommended to begin thinking about the ideas and drafting the summer before the application is submitted. There are many options in terms of who you could have write those letters, but the idea is that they're experts in the field in some sense, and that they know you very well and can write a detailed, strong letter of recommendation. Ideally, at least one of those recommenders would be a professor who you've worked with. You could have a professor who you know through taking class with them. You could have a postdoc or other researcher write you a letter of recommendation too. And you could have someone who works at an agency or who's involved in research in some professional capacity. Yeah, coming up with a project idea can be challenging, and each person's story of how they developed an idea to propose is probably different, but mine began actually with my master's research, where I was studying the effects of fire on different forest types in the Sierra Nevada. And essentially, I felt that the study design was imperfect, and that kind of limited the research questions I was able to answer with that design. And so I framed my NSF GRFP application around an ideal study that I designed that answered the question I actually wanted to answer, but couldn't with my current data set. And so I think one pathway to coming up with an idea is to think about improving on an existing project that maybe you or your advisor is working on. A great application, it's very well written and it showcases the strengths of the individual. One thing that I think is really special about the NSF GRFP is that they're looking to fund individuals, and that's different from a lot of other grants that are more project-based, where an institution is wanting a certain question answered, and so they're providing money for that question to be answered. This program is more about supporting scientists in the United States and supporting early career scientists and giving them a leg up so that they can pursue fruitful careers. And so a strong applicant must show that they're involved in novel, exciting work, but also that they're an individual with great potential. And so that in part is demonstrated by their work, but it's also demonstrated by their ability to teach and their ability to do community outreach and interest in being involved in those activities, so that whatever research they end up doing with this funding will actually have an impact. Really great question, and it's a little bit mysterious, I think. It helps when there's sort of a clear path to success for the research, and so being in touch with a faculty mentor who has expertise in that research field helps a lot with the feasibility of the project that's being proposed. However, I've been present at some panels where faculty talk about what the review process is like when they've been on the review boards for the NSF GRFP. And one thing that they have mentioned is that applicants are compared with other members of their cohort. And that means, so if seniors are compared with other seniors and first-year graduate students are compared with other first-year graduate students. And because of that, there's sort of an understanding by the evaluators. The evaluators understand that people coming right out of undergrad might be very strong, promising applicants, but might not have every aspect of their future planned out because of where they are. And so I think there's some acknowledgement of that, but at the same time, it's good for seniors and recent graduates to try to come up with a project that appears as feasible as possible, because that is evaluated. When I originally applied for the NSF GRFP, it was sort of as a test because I hadn't applied for a grant before, and I wanted to see if I enjoyed applying for grants, because if I did, then it might make sense for me to pursue a career as a scientist or a researcher. But if I didn't like writing grants, then I should go into a different field. And so it was kind of done as a bit of a personal experiment on myself to see if I liked the process. And as I worked on this application, I learned a huge amount. At the time, it was by far the best piece of writing I'd ever produced. And because I had to distill a research idea into just 2 pages, I got a much better idea of how to frame a scientific question in a way that other scientists could understand and value. So that process of having to develop an idea and write it down was a really valuable learning process in and of itself. Specifically at USU, if undergrads are doing ERCO grants and ERCO projects and then presenting at USU undergraduate research symposia, those are really good ways to demonstrate involvement in research at USU. And so if applicants are, if you're thinking of pursuing or eventually applying for this award, then getting involved in the ERCO program and making sure to take advantage of all of the research opportunities that USU offers would be a really good idea.